Hey everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. I got two questions this time. Actually, I got more, but I'm only going to focus on two because they're both complicated and long and semi-related. That's why I picked these two particular ones. I'm going to jump in, make this short. First one, what is internal alchemy? Internal alchemy, I'm really surprised that I got that before asking anything about Taoism. But anyway, internal alchemy is definitely connected to Taoism. It's also called Neidan, and it's I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. In Taoism, the chief goal was to attain a state of physical perfection. It's not like with European alchemy, where the goal was to transmute base metals like lead into gold, although that could be seen as an exoteric version of a true esoteric interpretation where you're actually trying to perfect your own soul through alchemy, which you could regard as sort of internal. But this is different. In Taoism, which doesn't really stress much in the way of an afterlife or long suffering in order to attain a superior post-death kind of existence, like most belief systems and structures, Taoism is really more about being alive. It's about living in the moment. Well, not in the moment, but it's about living. And so one of the chief goals is eternal life. And so internal alchemy is trying to balance all the things that could possibly be out of whack in your body in order to achieve sort of a kind of physical equilibrium, harmony, that the end result being either in a very long, healthy, happy life, which who wouldn't want that, or even to go as far as eternal life, just almost indestructibility of the body. You could sort of compare that to the four humors in European alchemy, but it's a little different. The big thing to take home here, or the big focus on internal alchemy, is the three treasures. So you got Jing, which means essence, life force. It can also mean seed, semen, and that was a big part of internal alchemy, was retrograde ejaculation and conservation through either retrograde ejaculation or chastity of semen. In fact, it's funny, I was talking about Bandits of the Marsh in a previous video. There's an immortal Taoist being. He's practiced internal alchemy, and he's actually held on to his vital male essence for so long that his blood is white, and you can imagine why it would be white in that story. And then the second of the three treasures would be Qi, that's breath, and you see this with modern day Tai Chi, as well as the martial arts version. What was that called? Is it Bagua? Oh man, it's been a while since I read up about that. Bagua. It's basically like actual fighting Tai Chi instead of just the old people in the park version. And that's, breath control. So Qi is breath, Jing is essence, and then you got Shen, which is spirit. And that one's a little more complicated to explain. And if you balance these three qualities, then you've entered a state of harmonious union internally, and presumably you can extend your lifespan or even live forever. Another aspect of that would be, let me think. Yeah, it's hard to remember all these terms because they're not in my native language. They're flipping Chinese. I should take notes. I really should. Again, chastity, preserving your essence and things like that. Oh, now I remember. A lot of it also involves actual external alchemy. I know that sounds somewhat contradictory, but using cinnabar, which contains mercury, I've mentioned before, this is why some emperors died, as well as combinations of herbs that can also help regulate a lot of these internal channels and rivers in the body, meridians, another good word for it, and in doing so, attaining a physical condition that's not so fragile as the normal underlying human condition. And practicing Tai Chi is a great example, actually, of internal alchemy, now that I think about it. And there's one other thing. We've got the elixirs that I mentioned, the external kind of stuff, and then we've got the breathing. Meditation, that's obviously going to play a role. Neidan, the emblems, I'm trying to think of Oh, now I remember. Fasting. Fasting is a big part of it. I was trying to think. I was like, what corresponds to the three treasures? The three worms or the three corpses? And these are the things that internally wear away at the body. Actually, kind of reminds me of Jormungand in Norse mythology, who kind of like wraps around the world, but his venom also gnaws away at the world tree. Well, you've got three worms in you that sort of gnaw away at your own longevity. And the best way to avoid that, and you see this with modern Taoism, by the way, you can actually talk to, I mean, this is, in the West, you know, there's a tendency to think that this is like ancient stuff, but they're modern Taoists, and they perform fasting. And, you know, sometimes they won't eat at all, and other times they'll just abstain from all grains, and the whole thing, it's really fascinating. I suggest people study it, because it gives paleo and carnivore and keto and all that sort of a run for its money in terms of how complicated it is. And again, that kind of eating has been around for thousands of years. It's really interesting stuff. But yeah, that's the third thing I was trying to think of. Fasting, controlling the three jewels, chi, breath, shin, spirit, and was it jing is essence? I will have to look that up to make sure. See, keeping up with, yes, jing is essence. So that's internal alchemy. It's very different from the whole Nicholas Flamel thing, even though the end result for that too was immortality. So very interesting that chemistry's loftiest pursuit in all culture was, you know, the immutability of the human body, and it's a far cry from what chemistry is now. I'm not criticizing, it's just kind of peculiar. Okay, next question, going to be shorter answer. What is the Voynich Manuscript? Great question. I was actually having a conversation about this the other day with someone. They had never heard of it before, and they assumed that I had heard of it, which I had. Voynich Manuscript is really interesting. It's this bizarre book. It was discovered, not too long ago. I'll look that up while I'm answering it, because I should. Okay, yeah, 1912. I was thinking actually the late 19th century, but early 20th century. Anyway, what's so weird about it is it's written in a language that nobody understands. These very bizarre looking symbols that are clearly letters. Excuse me, my throat's getting dry. I'm going to need some of my mugwort tea. It's written in these letters that no one has been able to actually translate. It looks really bizarre. It's riddled with pictures of flowers with naked ladies popping out of them, and a lot of the ladies look pregnant, and a lot of the plants, they have real analogs, and others don't seem to have any analogs that exist in nature. Some people thought it was a hoax by actually Voynich, the guy who bought it in, I think it was Poland, and some people thought it was like written in code, and some people thought it was some idiot savant who'd made up their own language. There's all these possible theories, and nobody really knows hands down what it is. But people have different theories, and I'm just going to share mine, since I can't really give a proper explanation any more than anyone else can. But the two things that I think are interesting to note about the Voynich Manuscript is, one, it's full of plants, really weird illustrations of plants, often, I know I'm overusing this word for this video, but possibly esoteric interpretations of plants. You know, the drawings aren't really all that accurate. It's not like reading like a naturalist book, like, you know, with sketches by Darwin showing finch beaks and things like that. But it does possibly illustrate things that those plants do. Like, for example, it may show a flower with an organ, a human organ in it, like what looks like a cross-section of something that would belong to a person, not a plant. Well, it's conceivable that plant has a positive effect on said organ. You see how that works? So there's the reason I chose to answer these two questions at the same time is there's clearly, in my opinion, an alchemical subtext to all these drawings. And in addition to that, it's riddled with naked ladies, including pregnant women, which there's only two reasons why I think that would exist. Well, actually three. Maybe it was written by a sexually repressed medieval teenager. Maybe it was written by a sexually repressed medieval monk. But I think, and this is not just my opinion, I mean there are other people who've considered this too, I think, given the plant combination with the naked women, many of whom look to be in different stages of pregnancy, I think this is some sort of midwife manual. I think this was, and it was probably written in code because in those days, the whole witch in the hut next door, it could get you burnt. It could get you hanged. It could get you locked in prison. It wasn't exactly the safest career, especially if, I mean, it's very plausible that some of the potions that these crones handed out were abortifacient, that is to say, pregnancy-terminating potions. So I think that it was written in code to protect the identities of the people who practiced it, as well as to protect some of their secrets. Because again, alchemy is all about writing things in codes and with secrets. That's why, again, if you read a modern alchemy book, alchemy text, you'll think, oh, this is silly nonsense. Well, a lot of it is not meant to be interpreted literally, and the Voynich Manuscript, I think, is no exception. I think a lot of these herbs have to do with pregnancy. I think a lot of these plants have to do with either ensuring the health of an embryo or fetus, or possibly the opposite. In any event, that's what I think it is. I think it's an alchemical text for midwives. And it's also interesting and it's worth looking into. That's it. Gonna cut this short. Gonna try and do it less than 12 minutes. Thanks everybody for watching. Ask me questions. Bye.